Alright, let's see, starting up. Just closing down. Sharing this. See who amongst the vampires are awake. Oh, there it is. Alright. I see it. So, people, alright. Alright, that's been shared. Awesome. Awesome, people, awesome. Inna alhamdulillahi wa kafah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa. Wa ala ibadi alladhina irtada. Wa man bihudahum ihtada. Wa bi athari ahli al-Madinah iqtafa. Wa ba'd. Fassalamu Allahi ala al-qawm. Ahlan wa sahlan bikum. Wa marhaban. Juan Ying Layth. Bienvenidos a todos. Bakhair Ragle, Khushamadid, people, and Swagatam. Alright, what's going on, folks? What is going on? What are the fitan and fasad? What's the... Is it sunnah to be on time? No, being on time is a... post-industrialist concept, which is really kind of promoted to kind of monetize time, people. That's what it is, really, to ensure the production of certain things. Don't worry about it. I'm on time, but I'm on my own time. You know, in Arabic there's a saying, there's a method, بالعربية, in Arabic, which states, especially to the West, if you like, that عندكم الساعة وعندنا الوقت. So you guys have watches and clocks, and we have time. That is so true. You know, in the Muslim world, we've just got time. Don't worry. You guys have got all the watches. That's what the method says. Elizabeth, ahlan wa sahlan, welcome, marhaban, bienvenidos. Alright, we've got Frabri. Claire Jones says, yes, Pakistan time. Yes, it's unfortunate. It's in our DNA, or it's in my DNA anyway. Don't know about all of Pakistan, but from the UAE, salam, ahlan wa sahlan, Shihab, Mufti Saab, you're doing it, I ain't doing anything. My solicitor and my lawyers have told me don't own up to doing anything. So I just follow that principle. I follow it like Quran wa Sunnah. That's it. Never admit to anything. You can always stay safe that way. Always have plausible deniability. Right, so what's going on, people? What is preoccupying the minds of the beautiful people out there? Oh, you Facebook friends, students, family. What is going on? What is going on? So, anything interesting about, before I'm also going to open up the questions as well that have already been submitted. Somebody said, Wasif Beg, a shout out for him. There you go. There you go. Ibrahim Amir saying, no face, no case. That's if you're sending those dodgy you naughty. Right, so why did you choose Maliki Fiqh? Why did I choose Maliki Fiqh? Maliki Fiqh, people. Let's start off with this whilst people are tuning in. Maliki Fiqh. Okay, so first of all, for our less expertise, for our less expert viewers, fiqh, not in case you're thinking, what on earth is Mufti Saab, Toba, what the fiqh? This fiqh. Some of the Arabs read it as fuck. They do. But I disagree with their pronunciation. They actually do say that. You're going to hear some of the fuqaha, like some of the scholars, they're like, really big beards and everything. And in between, they'll just go, the fuqah. And you'll be like, astaghfirullah, Shaykh. No need for that language, mate. I only asked an Islamic question. No need for that. But they actually pronounce it fuqah, some of the Arabs today, as in this day and age. So, but in traditional fiqh, it's called fiqh with a kasra, okay? Not with a dhamma. So the fiqh, right? What is fiqh? So fiqh is basically our understanding of Islam. Sorry, let me rephrase that. It's our understanding of what is kind of expected from us, okay, towards God or towards people. So that is called fiqh. It is partially synonymous with Sharia. So Sharia people tend to reserve only for the legal aspects, and fiqh is more generic, so it includes the legal aspect and the non-legal like worship and other things as well. So fiqh is, this is umum khusus. That's the relationship that's going on between Sharia and fiqh. So fiqh, and then within fiqh you have different ways of looking at things, interpreting, extracting Islamic law. How do we understand rulings? And everybody, they've got their own take on it. And then people kind of disappeared, and these four major schools of law remained. I say four because I'm being kind to the Hanbalis. Let's make that the Hanbalis, the little finger. There you go, the Hanbali. Wait there. That's about right now. The four. Because that's like the Hanbali contribution to Islamic fiqh. So now I'm being fair, right? So that's like, obviously the tallest is like the Maliki Method. But I don't want to put, if I bring these fingers down, this one get offensive, this one not nice. So that's me representing the schools of Islamic law. There's our little midget madhab. Midget madhab. The Hanbali madhab is like a midget madhab. So you've got these. So you got the Hanafi, you got the Maliki school, you got the Shafi'i school, and you got the Hanbali school down there. So these are the ones that have carried on. I mean, there were so many schools of law, in the tens, if not, one could argue in the hundreds. But, so this is what's continued. The Maliki Method is known as the school of Medina. It is the most awesome school of law there ever is, because it is built upon welfare and firmly rooted in evidence. It is known as the school of Medina, people. The school of there you go, School of Medina. Right now, somebody said, why am I Maliki? I never chose the Maliki Method. The Maliki Method chose me. Allah. The school of Medina chose me, people. Now, it's just because it made so much sense to follow the school of Medina. What are the schools in Medina? Allah. Hi. Look at The chai, people, the chai. So those of you that, and you can follow any school of law, most Asians, Indo-Pak people happen to be Hanafi, as was I, as in growing up, and but then, you know, you come to your senses. Now, to be fair, Imam Abu Hanifa was an absolute legend. But the problem is his school, if I'm to be fair in my assessment, his school has been long hijacked. And his school is the antithesis of him. It's such a control freak school today. Everybody, like, you know, if you've got like control freak, kind of like a syndrome, you suffer from that, then the Hanafi Madhab makes sense for you. So it's all about just controlling. Control. I have the control. The control. So that's what that's what these madhabs are. And the Maliki Method is obviously the super cool madhab, people. It's the one that ruled Muslim Spain as well. I mean, it was one of the most widespread madhabs throughout the world. Much more diverse than any other school of law, including the Hanafi school. So as in its diaspora, okay, the way it was kind of spread out. The school was in all of the different continents, and it was also something that was the major continents, and it was also it wasn't just theirs in people were Maliki. So Muslims in Spain for 700 years at least were probably Maliki. Now, it wasn't just that they were Maliki, but they were key figures. They were key players. Not those players, you know. Probably those players as well, but they were key players in the madhab. So they contributed. They were never shunned by each other. So the school became a really rich, resourceful school. Right, so let's move on to another question. Somebody said the amount of questions flying by as usual. Claire Jones said, well, let me see what I can see. Salam Mufti Saab, wa alaikum assalam. What's your advice on a hafiz to maintain their memorization? Well, you can just read as much as you can. There you go. I mean, if you try to read with understanding, that helps. Did you watch the Satanic Verses 30 years on? Right, okay. Is it sinful to stand up and urinate? Is it sometimes hard in public? What the hell? What the hell? Control, yaar. What are these questions? Let me get this. Must be misreading this question. Where the hell did it go? Is it sometimes hard? It is sometimes hard in public toilets, as they are very dirty. I thought, what kind of a confession is this? I thought, yaar, kahe ko sharminda kar rahe hain? Why are you embarrassing everybody on this live? Bilal Hussein. Is it sinful to stand up and urinate? Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. What have you done? I needed to take a leak. Is there something you're urinating on? I mean, I'm just trying to understand the sin. Why is it a sin? I mean, it's gotta go out. Obviously, you can't just keep building it up, all the fluid. So, it's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. Relieve yourself. Don't worry about it, man. It's all good. It's all good. There's nothing. The only reason why some people spoke against this standing up and taking a slash, so to speak, was simply because of the kind of clothing that they wore, and there was a great chance that you would get a splashback feature, not like a full blast. Not like you go, okay, I'm just about to relieve myself, and it's like come straight back at you full speed. Not like that, but there was a chance that you would get certain splashes maybe on your clothes and things like that. So this is why the scholars didn't like That said, it's perfectly fine. It's fine. Don't worry. Don't worry. I know the Hanafis are a bit weird on that. Hanafi school of law, but don't worry about them. It's not like the first time they're being weird. And you got to remember that, you see, in certain clothing, it's easy to sit down and urinate. So, let's say you're wearing a sarong, like the kind of the toti that they wear, the izar or the lungi, as some people call it. Now, wearing a lungi is actually even different, but it's still easy, because the lungi is like, I think it's in Bangladesh and some parts of India and other countries like Malaysia, but the lungi is like a fully tied, so you kind of step into it and then wrap it round. Whereas the izar or the toti that they have in Pakistan that they used to wear, or the izar that they wore in Arabia, ancient Arabia, is like a sarong, like that. So it's just like an open cloth that you just tie around you. Now you can imagine if you're walking around in that, if you're walking around commando, the way people were back then, when men were men. In that day and age, if you're walking around and you need to go to the toilet, you're not going to really just lift up your sarong like that and go, hey. So it's very convenient for you to just sit down. It's very convenient to sit down and do what you have to do. It's much more convenient than actually trying to raise you, because if you try to raise your actually with a toti you could probably, with the izar you could probably do it, but still it's actually, you much more easier to just sit down and do that. But now, even with the shalwar kameez, it's actually, because the shalwar that they wear in Pakistan, for example, it's actually very large. It has what they call the nara. The nara is like a belt feature, right? So it actually makes it look tight. So the shalwar, which looks baggy, is actually very, if you stretch it out, it opens really far. So it's very convenient to still sit down and, if you need to relieve oneself. But you see, with the trousers, how on earth could you sit down in public? I mean, unless you took the trousers off. So people are not going to do that. Especially, you got to remember, in the past, they never had these kind of public toilets like this. So, and you never had like bathrooms the way they're designed. So obviously, if a guy's walking in a park and he thinks, oh, I need a leak, so he's hardly going to take his trousers off and just hang it on the branch and just sit down. Yeah, all that to sit down. Yeah. It's too much, this one. So because of that, so there's no problem associated. There's no sin, no mortal sin, people, no sin at all. Relax. So, what else is going on? Oh, so I hope I've answered that. Whoa, quite a few questions have... Right, okay. The questions are back up. Okay, ahlan wa sahlan. Just connect, carrier bag. Interview with Vidu Vids. Of course. Vidu Vids. Great guy. And I'm looking forward to, inshallah, linking up with him some point soon. And we haven't set anything in motion. I'm just saying that in response to the question. And I'm sure I'll get some of the guys to reach out to him, inshallah. Is MJ guilty? Michael Jackson guilty? I don't know, because I know during his lifetime he was acquitted in the cases. I don't know. I think Michael Jackson was just weird, like just dead weird. Maybe I don't know. Maybe he wasn't a pedophile. I don't know. Maybe he was. I haven't looked at all the evidences, but I just think he was weird by normal people's standards. So to normal people, the stuff like he had this kind of thing like where he would openly say, because I remember watching an interview of his ages ago, this is when he was alive and going through the whole trial, where he would say, yes, I have kids staying over all the time, we sleep in the same bed, but what's wrong with that? And he's very open about this. He's not like, because that's the thing, I suppose, you know, pedophiles will probably try to hide all of that. But he was saying it so confidently, like, yeah, of course, you know, we sleep on the same bed and we do this, and what's wrong with that? And, you know, they're my friends, and, you know, I'm a child myself, and so I don't know if he was up to something, God forbid, I hope he wasn't, but I mean, I think he definitely was just weird by normal people's standard. And to normal people, we would definitely just think something is dodgy. Because that's not normal for a person, like a grown man, to be just sleeping with other people's kids, as in on the same bed, and having them do sleepovers. And they would stay with him. But that said, in the documentary I watched over a decade ago, or whenever it was a long time ago, in that the parents were well aware. They used to receive gifts from him, they used to receive brand new cars and all sorts, and I don't know, man, what is the world coming to? Right, so okay, guys, this reminds me, before I go on a serious moment, I'd like you to I just heard actually today about Ustad Noman Ali Khan. His sister had passed away. She just passed away today, I believe. I just heard this today. And so I'm assuming it was speaking about today, unless it was yesterday. I heard she fought and struggled with cancer, and then eventually passed. You know, may Allah grant her an elevated maqam in Jannatul Firdaus. May He make things easy for her family that she's left behind here. One can't even really, if I'm going to be honest, can't even truly imagine the kind of grief and the shock that would cause to, even if it was like a time-consuming battle, even if she was going through a sickness, but still, the shock and I suppose the void that it would leave. So may Allah make things easy for her family. Ameen. Also, our prayers and du'as are with them, and likewise anybody that's going through these kinds of struggles. You know, if I'm to be honest, these things sound so scary, and I'll share my own kind of thoughts, that I feel it's something so, it freaks the hell out of me. These kind of the thought of these kind of illnesses, or these kind of because subhanallah, because it's more the situation of helplessness. Because I suppose, and even though there are, in many of these things, there are, you know, there are success stories where people, you know, there is a kind of a fight against things like cancer and other illnesses, and there are many success stories, but still, just the very thought of them, I'll be honest, to me as an individual, the thought of them is very terrifying. You know, my du'as are with anybody and everybody who, and their families that are going through these things, because there's nothing they can do beyond, I suppose the doctors are doing what they can do, but there's nothing a person can do. And I think that is for insan, I think the worst situation is helplessness. I think that, to me, that is worse than death, you see. Like, I would rather, like, if I had to go, I would rather just go in an instant. Honestly, like, I had a discussion once with some friends, and we disagreed, actually, surprisingly. I thought everybody would think like me, but they don't. And then maybe I'm thinking weirdly, I don't know. But we had a discussion once, a group of friends and I, and about, imagine you had a choice that you were to, because everybody at some point goes from this dunya, that if you had a choice, would you rather be told that you have 6 months, let's say, or would you rather go in an instant? So I said, unquestionably, I would rather just go in an instant. I would rather just, at most, a few seconds, please. That's it. Like, I would rather just be like that, like over and done with. Like, I wouldn't, the thought, the kind of helplessness of something is so tragic to me as an individual. It's so debilitating that and that's just the way I as an individual think. There were people, good friends of mine, disagreeing with me on this, saying they would like, they would actually rather have so many months and put things in order. And I understand that. But I'm just saying that, and everybody thinks differently, but to somebody like me, the helplessness of something is so, like, I would rather just be as I am and then just gone. You understand? Like that. Like, that's just me as an individual. But I don't know. I mean, it's a scary, it's scary. If I'm to be honest, the thought of death is scary. What's scary is, it's not, I'm not I'm not so it's not about like punishment and things like this that scare me as an individual. Like people say, oh, the punishment of the grave or the things, because I think with time my belief or perception perhaps of Allah, of God, kind of evolved. I don't see Allah as somebody obsessed with punishing or with doing things like this. I don't know, that's just where I stand in time right now. My relationship with God isn't one like that, and I'm not saying that is the right relationship, but it's just my relationship right now isn't one of necessarily fear. But it's just, it's death is, I suppose it's the, because it's the unknown, isn't it? And it's the fact that it's the cessation, the ceasing to be, like this world, everything, it's really just stemming like from here, like the perception of everything, our understanding, and it's just to stop, and it's a scary thought. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to be, pretend to be one of these, people say, oh, it's not daunting. It's not like this. It is, and it is scary. And then sometimes, I don't, it's weird because this journey of life is sometimes it has an existential angst. Insan is never content, because sometimes a person, you have an existential kind of angst within this world, this kind of like almost a yearning and sometimes you can have a fed up kind of feeling as well, that you're just fed up and you're thinking, I'm just, this world, what is, and I think all of these things are normal, I think, but I don't, yes, Salam. So sometimes what I'm trying to say is there's a contradiction. Sometimes a person does get fed up, I think, of this kind of dunya, of just things, and, it's like that old poem that you have of, in the Mu'allaqat, where he says, وَمَنْ يَعِشْ ثَمَانِينَ حِجَّةً says, وَمَنْ يَعِشْ ثَمَانِينَ حِجَّةً لَا أَبَا لَكَ يَسْأَمِي. That, and whosoever lives like the age of 80 years, He says, لَقَدْ سَعِمْتُ مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ. Like he begins by saying, I've become so fed up and bored of this life and world. And then he goes on to say, وَمَنْ يَعِشْ 80 حِجَّةً لَا أَبَا لَكَ يَسْأَمِ. And whosoever lives for 80 years of age, he inevitably gets bored, gets I've had enough. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, may Allah make things easy. I think we as human beings, we have a unique ability to reflect and ponder over our existence, over the existence of other people and creatures, this world, this dunya. And subhanallah, it is very, I think, it's very difficult. But may Allah make things easy for people that are going through any kind of struggles. In light of this, I was saying that I once watched this documentary about, this is going to sound really weird, but it was about executions. And it was about this, in the UK, the execution system they had. And the last executioner, as in the last, the man that would hang, his name was Pierpoint. And there's a whole movie made about him, by the way. But I watched these things about him a few years back. I don't know why I ended up... I have this thing, you see, like when I read something, I want to know more about it and more about it and more. And the next thing I know, I've read up and I've watched so many things on it. It's like I have all this information and don't know what to do with it. But anyway, at that time, I ended up reading all these things, and it was just... It left me kind of disturbed for a while at least. And but it was about executions before they were abolished within the UK. And they were speaking about how they would operationalize them. And Albert Pierpoint, I think his name was, or was it Alfred Pierpoint? But Pierpoint was his name. And they were speaking that he had a record that from the moment he walked in through the door to the execution, as in done, he had a record, I think an average of, I think his fastest was like 9 seconds. And I think his average was anything between 11 to 13 seconds he would do it. But it was, you see, what was really shocking was that when they would have these cells that they call the condemned cells, that they would put these people in. And then it would be like 3 weeks later. But that 3 weeks of just knowing, you see, that is probably, to me, I'm imagining worse than the actual, because that's just an anticipation of something that you don't want to be anticipating. So it's right. So I think these so these kind of things. But yeah, and it was really intriguing actually the way the British were doing it at that time, that they had you see, the prisoner who they call the condemned, he didn't actually know that the execution chamber was actually linked to his cell. So what would happen is when they would bring him in, they would take his coat off and everything and bring him across these kind of like the wing and then put him in this cell. So the cell would have 2 doors and he would get certain guests come from the other door, and that's like presumably the way out. And then this was the way to the wing. So he didn't know, like he would have assumed that this would perhaps from the wing would be where the execution would take place. So when they turn up on the day, he would think, okay, now I'm going to walk out, I'm going to probably go down the wing. It's probably like basically, he's in his mind, he's probably thinking, yeah, it's going to take about 5 minutes to get to this place, wherever it is. So as soon as they open the door and walk in, it was a common reaction for people to just, they would just have a kind of like, almost like a stage fright. Like they would just get up and just be in a state of almost shock. So what they would do is they would just walk in, turn the person around, and he's just compliant because he's in a state of shock. They would just kind of tie his hands, bring his hand. But whilst they're doing that, they would just walk. One of the guards would move the cupboard. Right? So as he's getting up, they're turning him around, a guy moves the cupboard, and they're just taking steps. Now, he doesn't even know that behind the cupboard is a door. It's a doorway to the execution chamber. So he would just be taking steps with the guard, and it's only something like 7 steps. So and remember, the whole thing is a shock. He's probably thinking, whoa, there's a door here. And he's taken the steps. They just put the bag on his head, the noose, and pull and it was done. Like, bloody hell. Like, oh my God. I was like, and then they were like, oh, there's a science to it. They used to put the knot on this side so it would kind of crack the bloody, and oh my God, I was disturbed after. Now you realize why I'm messed up. But I remember watching it and I was very disturbed by it. But the whole thing was very, at the same time, weirdly intriguing. But yeah. Right, let's take some other questions, people. What's going on? What's going on? The last hung woman was Ruth Ellis. Right, yes. Ruth, if I'm correct, didn't he? I believe he's the one who hung her. And she was the one who killed her husband because he was abusive, or if that's the correct case, if I remember. He was abusive to her, and she was they were saying, in the interview about her, that she was very brave, and even right up until the very end. But it is tragic. You see, I'm against all kind of capital punishments. I just feel that these things are, it's just not the way. I feel that human beings, we are above that. You understand? But that's my way of thinking. Was the right? Okay. What else is? What are some of these questions? What is tasawwuf? What is tasawwuf? Who is tasawwuf? Who's Tess? ¿Qué ahora? ¿Qué está pasando? Who's tasawwuf? I don't know tasawwuf. Do you mean tasawwuf? Well, tasawwuf is simply the term for Sufism, and what it means, I mean, you all know what Sufi orders are. They're like mystic kind of orders, which revolve around spirituality but have their own kind of folkloric, superstitious structures to them. That's what they are in essence. But they are based on the concept of mysticism stroke spiritualism. That kind of, that's what they are. They don't actually have, they're not actually from the Quran or Sunnah. It's not actually from authentic Islam, tasawwuf or Sufism. That said, I don't think it's necessarily it's not a problem with Islam either. I don't think there's such a, if people want to do it, I don't think it's a big problem. I don't think they need to be condemned or anything like this. It's like I said, it's like having a kind of a mishmash between mysticism and spiritualism. So focusing on the spiritual, but then with this strong element of mysticism in there. And then you kind of shroud that in a lot of cultural, ritualistic, folkloric kind of practices from folklore that are not really based on the Quran or Sunnah. So and then you end up, that is pretty much, so they're orders. You have a tariqah which has a sheikh, and then you pledge your allegiance, you follow what the sheikh tells you, and there's, and I'm sure there's a lot of Sufis who are great people. There's many of my mashayikh and shuyukh who are Sufis. I respect them dearly, and they are great people, but some Sufi turuq do become like, turuq is the plural of tariqah, they do become very cultish. So everything is about the sheikh. The sheikh this, the sheikh that, the sheikh. We're not worthy. Sheikh is just rinsing it. But one thing I won't lie, I do find intriguing is how intelligent people, intelligent men and women, become so blind in some of these Sufi orders. I don't, it beats me, seriously. I can't truly fathom that a person of great intelligence becomes intellectually blinded. Like they just become like an automaton. Anything the Sheikh says is always that's quite amazing. And always the Sheikh and the Sheikh's photos everywhere, and the Sheikh and I don't know. I find that kind of stuff, I won't lie, I find it weird. But I don't condemn Sufism per se. I don't condemn it. It's not from the Quran or Sunnah, I'm being very clear. But I don't condemn it. And I think if it helps people, fine. You know, there's nothing... somebody said Sufis have beautiful manners. People have beautiful manners. I'm sure there's beautiful manners with many people. You know, it doesn't. It's not a generic thing that all Sufis must be. You know, I think there's good and bad everywhere. So, yeah. What do you think of Peer Saqib Shami? Hi, Saqib Shami Sahib. Damat Barakatum al-Aliya. Saqib Shami Sahib is also one of these mashayikh of tasawwuf. He has his own tariqah, I believe. I think, is it a Chishti tariqah? I think it is. I think it's a Chishti. But his followers, I'm pretty sure they write Chishti. That's the name of the order. They write Saqibi after their names. You know, Sheikh or Peer Saqib Shami Sahib, I don't, you know, what do I think of him? I don't know. Like, I think he's very intelligent for what he's done and achieved. He's definitely very intelligent for having achieved what he achieved. You know, he has a unique kind of influence over people, which is quite intriguing actually, because he's the only British as in Western scholar, or Western imam or peer or sheikh who has an influence in the East. It's never heard of. I'm telling you, it's never heard of. Like, the only time you could be like a Western sheikh having an influence in the East is if you are actually from the East, as in you were, you know, like you were already there and established as a sheikh there, and then you came over here. There's no such thing as you kind of being raised here and being a true, like, if I can, that's what I mean by a Westerner. I know if I can just use this loosely right now, not trying to get into an immigration debate, but what I mean by like a Western imam or sheikh is one who's raised here, not like somebody who has kind of migrated here after being established in a different, like in the East. It's unheard of. So Saqib Shami Sahib has definitely, Peer Sahib has, you know, he has some amazing influence, which is definitely awe-striking. I mean, in terms of knowledge and things like that, I don't really think he tackles any ilmi issues. I don't think he tackles academic issues. I don't even think he's inclined towards the academia side of Islam, or the ilmi side of Islam, the knowledge-related side. I don't think that's the impression I get. He could be, but maybe he just doesn't, it's not evident, but I don't assume he's inclined that way. Or he's interested in, you know, those kind of dialogical discussions out there, like, let's say, these are the challenges to Islam presented by atheism or modern contemporary context, how do we respond to them? I don't think that's his thing. I think his thing is just about spirituality and that tasawwuf. And that said, I have heard that there's many people who were, if I can use the term, excuse me for saying this, but those people that were kind of totally utter lost causes, that he has turned around and made them into very kind of kind-hearted, or at least apparently kind-hearted human beings. So I think if it's that alone, then that deserves a salute. You know, like that. If you can turn somebody into a good human being, then I respect that. That in itself. The other things, you know, you can do whatever, I suppose, whatever floats your boat. It's not really my thing, but I think this thing I do respect. I think Sheikh Saqib Shami has done that from people I've actually seen and come across. So this isn't just that they were absolute lost causes. So people around the Alum Rock area in Birmingham, in some like the Aston area, places like these that are densely Muslim, and you've got a lot of people lost to drugs, lost to drug addictions, to this kind of like crime lifestyles, that he's turned their lives around. So I think that is an amazing thing. So I absolutely respect him for that. So cool. So that's my opinion on him. Right. So make a mean langar. I don't know about the langar. I've never really been to any. Salams from New Zealand. Wow. Ahlan wa sahlan. That from the corners of this earth, people. New Zealand. Ya salam. It's if a Muslim country, majority country, was running under Sharia, would a non-Muslim be able to be its leader? Right, that's an interesting question. You see, the question is this, people. Nobody really knows what the Sharia means. You know, when we say to people that, you know, if a country, or people say, I want the Sharia. What is the Sharia? Like, so, what is the Sharia? If the Sharia is fiqh, like, so it's fiqh, so it's like these books which I've got behind me, books of Islamic teachings and Islamic law is the Sharia, then there is no single, with certainty I can say, there is no one single perception of what the Sharia is. Like, because all these books disagree. They disagree categorically. I don't just mean they disagree on a slight, you know, like a little nuance. They disagree categorically on almost everything. Almost everything they disagree on. So the question is, what is Sharia? So it's okay to just have one person's book. So you could say, yeah, as long as it's any of them. Really? So, okay. So there are Muslims in the Sharia books that have said that, oh, well, if you've had judges and the judges were placed by non-Muslims over you and the judges were non-Muslim, it's fine. There have been people that have said that they can rule over you as non-Muslims. Other people would disagree. There have been Muslim judges, Muslim scholars writing on the Sharia saying Sharia dictates that all its punishments and everything change with the day and age. Beginning, like great scholars like the Shaykh al-Islam of his age, Abul Qasim al-Burzuli, the great Maliki legend, and many scholars after him supporting him on that. Others will say that is kufr, kafir. There are scholars who will say that, you know, that all of these laws of transaction that we've got in these books, there's nothing sacred about them. They were just based on the custom of the time. You will base everything on your own customs. What does Sharia actually mean? Because what is Sharia? Like, I don't know what it is, because this is one of the greatest, the greatest kind of myths out there, that nobody truly knows what Sharia means. Like, they think, oh, it just means madhab, like the fiqh. But the fiqh according to who? They say, well, the fiqh according to the majority. So it becomes a democratic process. Like, what makes one scholar's fiqh more worthy than another scholar's fiqh? Is it just a democratic process that he has more followers? Then that's ridiculous. So it's not about the truth, it's just simply about who has more followers. So there's, so the Sharia, there's no idea, because if you're going to say, well, the Sharia is the punishment penal justice code, well, there's many scholars that said that should have been long abandoned. And these are scholars of the Sharia telling you that the penal justice code ought to have long been substituted with financial penalties, like Abul Qasim al-Bursuli said, or penalties in accordance with your day and age. So, okay, so is it the transaction laws? Then many scholars will say, no, transactions are simply based on your culture. So in the day and age of the Prophet, they didn't have, for example, they used to always in Arabia, they had to express what they were doing. They didn't have bay'ut ta'ati, that you could just buy something by just picking it up and putting the money down. You had to be very clear, but because that became the norm hundreds of years later, or within a few hundred years, everybody accepted it straight away, except the Shafi'is, who were a bit rigid, and they accepted it a few hundred years late. So, okay, so it's not transaction. So what is it? Is it marriages and divorce? Or is it worship? Like, what is Sharia then? So, in my understanding, Sharia is simply the preservation of certain concepts, like justice, ensuring, but justice as it makes sense within your context. Compassion, humanity, education, these things, the welfare of human beings, these things are what Sharia was. This is Sharia. The problem is that we today, we have a name without a content. Like we have a name like Sharia, but we don't know what it means. Like we think, oh, yeah, Sharia is, what is it again? Oh, yeah. So nobody really, right. The only things they do know are like, oh, cut the hand of the thief. Like that's going to start making things better. Like so, and then like I said, many scholars said that ought to have been abrogated with the day and age. So this is why I would say that, look, in this day and age, the question is this. The Muslim countries we have today are your Muslim communities. The democratic process we have today is fine. Now, if they selectively choose a non-Muslim to rule over them, then that's their choice. Although personally, going by, just the wisdom of the ages, I would say that whenever you get a minority trying to rule a majority, it never ends well. So if it is a Muslim majority, then a Muslim ruling them, a person from the people, for the people, by the people, that it usually works much better. When you have a minority, so likewise if a Muslim is ruling non-Muslims, it usually doesn't end well. I'm not saying in every case, but if they chose a non-Muslim, then that's their choice. So, okay, what else is going on, people? Shall we take some questions? See, people say you don't answer the questions, but when I look here, there's no bloody questions. Right, so trying to get in there. What's going on? All right, here it is. It's let me in, people. All right. Should women attend a namaz-e-janazah and or burial rituals? This is a question asked by Abdullah ibn Abbas not the famous, not the Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu an, but this is this Abdullah ibn Abbas from God knows, from Facebook. Okay, so can women attend the Janazah funeral prayers? Of course they can attend the funeral prayers. What does that even mean? Women can most certainly attend the funeral prayers. And can they attend the burial rituals? Yes, they can. Absolutely. And you see that although, and many of the scholars have written about this, Ibn Abdul Bar and the great hafiz of Muslim Spain and other people have written that those hadith, because there was some hadith where the Prophet prohibited some women from going to the graves, those hadith were abrogated, and that was just for a period of time until they were placing some structure. You see, because the Arabs of, and today even some other people have this custom as well, the Arabs of old, of ancient times, had a custom that if they were to die, it was seen, you know, part of the kind of part of the duty of the women folk that they leave behind was that they were to really cry and create a scene, and they wanted this scene created. And they would say that it's like the famous Arabic Jahiliyyah poet when he says in his إِذَا أَنَا مِتُّ فَنَعِينِي بِمَا أَنَا أَهْلُهُ. If I die, then, you see, the na'i is like the kind of the news and the outbreak that a person has upon the news of death of a beloved. So when you hear that somebody has died, your kind of, your outcry and your kind of, whether you, however you do that, or your expression was the na'i. So he says, إِذَا أَنَا مِتُّ فَنَعِينِي بِمَا أَنَا أَهْلُهُ وَشُقِّي عَلَيَّ الْجَيْبَ وَشُقِّي عَلَيَّ الْجَيْبَ يَبْنَةَ مَعْبَدِي. That, and tear your clothes and kind of like beat yourself, yabnata ma'badi, like he's saying to his daughter, that do this, like make sure. So this was the kind of custom that they had. Some guys are thinking, it's not like about women just ripping their... And they're like, why are these funerals so jam-packed? And people are selling for, you know, for front rows. They're like, right, it costs this much to be in the front row. Like, oh, yeah. And everybody's like, yeah, it's a tragedy, yeah. So the women would kind of like beat themselves. They'd go like, they go, so they would do all this kind of like beating themselves. They slap their faces and their bodies, and they tear this was known as the jabe, this kind of hole that you stick your head through, but obviously it was much lower. Almost like how this kind of necklace, I suppose, kind of goes down. And they would tear that, and not quite the but that's what they would do. So yeah, so see all this. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for a brief period, applied a kind of a moratorium, a kind of just a suspension until they had some structure in place to control this custom, in saying, okay, look, keep these women who are going to do this, keep them back. Okay. That in fact, there's even a poem by Mir Taqi Mir where he says, where he says, where he says, "Marte to sab hai mir." Damn. It's kind of, it's a classic of Mir Taqi Mir where he says, that everybody dies, but not with, but what a tragedy. He's kind of speaking about a tragedy that's befallen him. I think he says, Marte to sab hai mir parna is bekasi ke saath. Something like that, I think. Roya na koi. I've forgotten it. I read it a long time ago. But it's where he says that nobody cried out with your name upon your death. That, everybody dies, but not all go through such a tragedy that your death was a silent death. Like people didn't even cry for you. So this custom did exist. So the Prophet simply, to control that for a brief period, set some parameters. So that's the hadith that people are quoting. Otherwise, the Prophet after that said, look, the graves, visit them. They remind you of the afterlife. And in the hadith, the wording is, Inni kuntu nahaytukum. I had prohibited that you visit the graves. Ala fazuruha. Visit them. Fa innaha tudhakkirukum bil akhirah. That they remind you of death. Right, so what else is going on? Live or die. Why do we circumcise when Allah says, I have created you perfectly? Sahil Sikandar. Upset with the little snip. It's like, Doctor Saab? Doc, no. Imagine if the doctor's got like, I don't know, like he's got Parkinson's. It's like, don't worry, we're just going to do a little snip. Okay. And he comes in with the scissors. He's got like the... You know what you should do as a prank? That would be an awesome prank, don't you think? If the doctor, you go for a circumcision and the doctor comes in with he goes, don't worry, I've got it all under control. You see, this is circumcision in Islam isn't something mandatory, but it's recommended, really. It's a strong emphasis as part of the fitrah. Why is it part of the fitrah? It's actually very, it's more hygienic, and it kind of, it does support a more hygienic lifestyle. And the studies actually today scientifically demonstrate that. And some people have argued that it causes a slight numbness, as in it results in slightly less, like it results in a slight desensitization of the area, of the precious area. That said, obviously, we wouldn't know. Because that's all we've ever known. So that's where we set the standard. So, but I don't think it's, I'm pretty sure the sensitization is pretty fine. But apparently people say that it ought to be more sensitive than it is for guys who are circumcised. But I mean, it does its job. That's the main thing. So, but circumcision is really just a health thing, and there's nothing wrong with it. Right? Okay. It's in all religions. It is scientific. It is, and today you will see that even studies on circumcision demonstrated, for example, the transmission of diseases, for example, that when they did a study on circumcised men and uncircumcised men, when they were even exposed to such dangerous diseases like HIV, 50%, that's half the bloody applicants, half the bloody participants, half of the people, when it came to the circumcised group and the control group, the non-circumcised, that they were half likely to be infected, and that for some reason it wouldn't allow the transmission of the the viruses and things like that easily. It would, but not as easily as those who weren't circumcised. And part of this is that, you see, what we probably don't realize as Muslim men is that with the foreskin, it's not just a skin, right? It is a skin, obviously. I mean, that's what it is. But beneath the skin, there's actually these kind of like tiny kind of like glands and things which excrete a kind of mucus. So it keeps the gland, the head, the chief of staff, it keeps that moist at all times. That's if you weren't circumcised. Obviously, we're circumcised, so we don't really have that experience. But for non-circumcised people, there's actually a kind of a gradual excretion of this kind of mucus. Okay, and so now that can result in a kind of build-up. But because of that, those glands that are with the foreskin, they are very susceptible to picking up kind of viruses and things like that. So that's one. I'm just saying today, this is something scientifically demonstrated today. I remember reading this a little while back, all these kind of research, this kind of study, because I got into a debate with a friend of mine who works at Emporium Gym. He's an atheist. And we got into a discussion once about circumcision. And he said, well, why, this is, it's all nonsense and so on. And obviously we're joking and laughing. We have a good kind of banter between us. But I went away and ended up researching it. And I have to say, I was so impressed with, and this is from general data available, not Muslim data, general scientific data available. I was so impressed with what I came across and found that even if I was a non-Muslim and I wasn't circumcised and I've read that, I would go and get circumcised. I'm serious, because I just read the amount of kind of benefits. I was like, wow, thank God that decision was made for us. But yeah. Is it moral to force it on children as people do because of supposed health benefits? You see, I believe that this is a choice that the parents have. And yes, of course, I think that if you believe it, look, science demonstrates it definitely has. You see, if you had non-circumcision and circumcision, circumcision definitely outweighs from a health perspective and a hygiene perspective. Now the question is, should you have it? Now, within Islam, it is strongly emphasized as part of the fitrah. When we use words like imposing it on children, it sounds very kind of demonic and sounds kind of like draconian and like, oh my God, like my child doesn't want this and I'm like, I'm imposing this on you. It's not really, like, to me, that there's many decisions that a parent will undertake with the child. It's like saying, is it okay to impose chilies on your child in their cooking? Is it okay to impose? Like when we use words like this, they're loaded terms. So obviously, if I eat curries and I eat chilies, now I'm going to impose curry on my child. But you see, when we say it like that, you're making it sound like I'm sticking a funnel in the child's mouth and just pouring curry inside, and I've got them in some kind of like gulag or in some torture chamber. But you see, these words are just loaded terms. I think the better term is it okay to choose this for your child? Because is it okay to impose education on your child? Is it okay to impose education? Who said, like, just because we assume education is a good thing, Arguably it is, but I mean, I'm just saying there's many people who haven't had a decent education, but they have far surpassed the educated people in productivity within this world, in achievements. There's many people who've become millionaires and they can't even write well. You know, there's many people who have become well established. There's people who've conquered immense parts of the world historically, and they couldn't read and write. Akbar, one of the greatest kings of India in his time, you know, he apparently couldn't read and write. But there's so many people who've done so many things and they didn't have a schooling per se. Is it okay to impose schooling upon your child? I think these words are wrong. I think it's always right for parents to make choices on behalf of their children up until their children reach a certain age of maturity that they can make choices themselves. It's like saying, is it okay to impose piercings on your children, on little girls, give them an ear piercing? Why? I mean, why not wait till they're 18? It just does, the world, is it okay to cut their hair? Is it okay to clip their nails? Is it okay to, these things. So I think, although I understand you could say, well, the hair could regrow, but piercings are a reasonable example. I think imposing education, you can't undo that. Imposing certain discipline upon children, you can't undo the time spent. So I think, if that makes sense. But isn't it much powerful to have a circumcision before marriage? Is circumcision so-called condom before the what? What the hell is Abdullah on about? Is circumcision the condom? Right, okay, well, Abdullah doesn't get to teach sex education, people. There's all these unwanted pregnancies because Abdullah has been teaching sex education. It's like, don't worry, condom. We don't need family planning. We're circumcised. So Abdullah is thinking that if you're circumcised, you can't make anybody pregnant. And then he's got like 50 letters coming from the child support agency saying, Puttar, can you come in and bring your checkbook? Quran. Samir Ahmed Zai has asked how to respond to Christians claiming Quran can be corrupted if we claim the Bible and other religions have been corrupted. This is an interesting discussion. I met up this last week with Sheikh Sajjad, an amazing scholar, by the way, very underappreciated because he's not so available on social media. Now, right, somebody's asking about the LGBTQ education thing. I'll come to that. Okay, so let me just... Alright, so let me just... I'll come to that, just one moment. Now, this question about what is revelation in the past, I think this is seriously a misunderstanding, a great misunderstanding, and a failing on our part as Muslims to be able to convey this concept. You see, we as Muslims assume that revelation in the past reflected revelation that we have, which is Quran. That's not true. Not true at all. We need to undo this kind of this understanding. Now, I want you to pay attention here. You see, the Quran is called Quran in Arabic. Now, Quran means it's something that is recited. A recitation. Okay. So by its nature, it's gonna be designed in a way to recite. So for example, if I pick up a newspaper is not designed to be recited. It's designed to simply convey information. Now the Quran it's called Quran. In the Quran, you are told that Allah has sent down Inna anzalnahu Qur'anan Arabiyan la'allakum taqilun, in the hope that you may be able to fathom this with your intellect. Allah says, look, the Quran, yes, it has a message. Obviously it has a message. I'm not talking about that. But its nature in which it was revealed to us as Muslims in this tradition was as a recitation that you recite it. It has and that's going to now have a certain nazm, it's going to have a certain structure, it's going to have a certain style, a rhythm. It's going to have, by its nature, it's going to be something which will be then memorized. You understand? Now, the previous revelation, we're assuming, were also Quranic. They weren't Quranic. Nobody said they were Quranic. Maybe at best one could argue was the Zabur, the Psalms of David, was that because it was like hymns and like a kind of like a song. But put that aside, it's the praise of the Lord. But put that aside, what was revealed to the Israelites, the Torah, was not a book of recitation. It was a message. It was laws, but as a message. And then, and on a side note, I believe, I'm actually inclined to understanding that the Torah, which is, you know, like the Jewish Bible, was more comprehensive than what was just revealed to Moses. So Musa alayhi salam had some things revealed to him. That was not the Torah as a whole. That was just a small percent or a percentage of the Torah. I'm not saying it was a tiny percent. It was a significant percent, but it wasn't the whole Jewish Bible. The whole thing was called the Torah. Okay, now as in the significant books were called the Torah. They were not all revealed to Moses. They were revealed to the later prophets of Bani Israel as well. That's why in the Quran, Allah never says ever, not even once, that we gave Moses the Torah. He never says that. He just says we gave Moses revelation. But whenever he uses the word Torah with Bani Israel, he never uses it with Moses in that verse. But rather Bani Israel were given the Torah. Not we gave Moses the Torah. So many Muslims, I think that's a subtle, not that it makes a big difference, but I think that's another misunderstanding we have, that we think the Torah was to Moses, but it's only some of that revelation that came to Moses, which constitutes the Torah, was to Moses. But the rest of it, which came to subsequent prophets of Israel, including Daniel and others and Ezekiel and all these other prophets, right, that all put together was the Torah. Okay, so hence when the Israelites were in Babylon, in the Babylonian kind of, and they lived in their surroundings, and naturally they took on their laws. So they took on the laws of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Why? Because that was the law of Hammurabi in Babylon, and it was there from almost 3,500 to 4,500 years before. So way before Moses and things like this. So, but this became the law for the Israelites. Why? Because it was the law of the surrounding environment they were in. And hence Allah says, وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي التَّوْرَاةِ, and we wrote in the Torah, النَّفْسُ بِالنَّفْسِ وَالْعَيْنُ بِالْعَيْنِ, that, you know, that you have a life for a life and an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Because that is exactly the law of Hammurabi with the Babylonians. But this came after Moses. So Moses, in his law, whether you want to say the commandments he received or other things, it didn't say like a tooth for a tooth and an eye for an eye. This came after. But put that aside, you see, when it came to Jesus, what were the Gospels that Jesus received? Gospels simply mean the good news. And even in the Quran, when it says the Injil, that he had the Injil, and people say this is it's a kind of derogate, like it's a mutation, or a mutation, if you like, of the word in Aramaic, which means good news. So what was the good news that Jesus was giving his people? He was giving them some good news about, about God, and about the message, and about also the good news that they don't need to be so rigid on certain things to enter the kingdom of God, like the way the Jewish law was. And Jesus says, "Ana ji'tukum musaddiqan lima bayna yadayya." I have come to confirm that which went before me. وَلِأُحِلَّ لَكُمْ بَعْضَ الَّذِي حُرِّمَ عَلَيْكُمْ. And so I may make halal, permissible for you, some of those things which you think are impermissible. But the good news he gave them were the Gospels. As in the message, just the good news that he gave them. This was the gospel, the good news. So we think, like some Muslims think, oh, God gave Jesus a book like the Quran, and that Quran is lost today. No, it was that good news. That was the Injil, the gospel. So, but we are mistaken in thinking it's a book of recitation, because we are applying our parameters onto them. So when it came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the revelation was a Quran. It was something to be recited. So I hope that makes sense. Are the other books corrupted? You see, it depends what you mean by corrupted, because they were never meant to be. It was the overall message that was meant to be preserved. It wasn't meant to be like a recitation book like the Quran. So when we keep saying that the other messages are corrupted, it depends what you mean by that. That yes, they weren't preserved verbatim. So if that's what we mean by corrupted, then yes, that is true. They were corrupted from that perspective, if that's what you mean. That the message, the way it came, to the way Jesus spoke the message, that verbatim, word for word, or those kind of things haven't been preserved, because we're not even sure what language Jesus spoke it in. Did he speak it in the Greek? Jesus himself would have spoken Aramaic, or did he speak it in the ritual Hebrew? Or was it in Aramaic? We don't know these things. So from that aspect, one could use the word corrupted if you wanted to use that word. That they're not in their original format. But the overall and surely by them not being in their original format, many things may have been lost, and some things may have been wrongly put in there. And so that, from that perspective, you can use the term corrupted. But the overall message, or some of the generic kind of message, I'm pretty sure would have been that. So Jesus trying to tell them, look, he's trying to advise them, speaking about the kingdom of God and doing this, and you have to the stories of the Good Samaritan or other things. I think these things would have been generally what Jesus would have told them. So I hope that's of some help. Yep, of course, Claire Jones is saying it's a book of stories, so translation changed the story. Of course, and not only that, it had parables. I mean, so the stories, I suppose, parables, and it had an overall message, and then it had detail. And the people writing the Gospels came much after Jesus by the time they documented them, and they disagree amongst themselves, and they've obviously their version, and I'm sure their interpretation. So yes, I accept you can, if that's what you mean by corrupted, you can use that term. If God knew that the previous books would be corrupted or changed, why wasn't the Quran sent down and preserved from the beginning? You see, I think this comes back to our misunderstanding of what was it that God wanted from the people. It wasn't, first of all, you have to remember, Jesus came just for the Israelites. He didn't come for mankind. Like, as far as Muslims are concerned, Jesus himself says that I'm only here for the tribes of Israel. He doesn't, even when he says he kind of commissions his 12 disciples that they will one day, he will set them on a throne to rule and judge over the 12 tribes of Israel. He doesn't say over mankind. Jesus was never trying to say, I am here for humanity, and I am here for the Romans, and I am here for the Greeks, and I am here for the Chinese. And he was never making that claim. And Moses was never making that claim. Moses never said, oh, I'm here for the Arabs, and I'm here for this. He was only here for the lost tribe of Israel. That was it. So there's a difference in purpose and in perspective as well. And secondly, who says that their books were meant to be preserved like that? That was never part of their... That wasn't what they were trying to do, because it wasn't a book of recitals. It was an understanding, a message. With the Jews, I think a lot of their things have been preserved. I think they have generally, because their books were more about laws. And their living tradition is full of laws. So I would believe that a lot of their tradition has been preserved. But I mean, what difference does that make? I mean, it's not like just because it's preserved, you're gonna buy it now. You know, you're not gonna really follow it. So Chaudhry Usman is asking, do we believe these books are corrupt? Then why do we quote them? I mean, we can quote them if it makes sense on certain aspects. There's nothing wrong about quoting them if it makes sense. Guys, so let's take some other... Does the Quran imply that the Torah and the Bible we have now is the same one that the Christian Jews during Muhammad's time were reading? The Quran doesn't address that. The Quran does refer to them having scripture. Was the scripture that they had that they had in the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, identical to the scripture that we have, that the Christians or Jews have today? In all honesty, I don't know whether it was identical or not. I know that there are several. It most likely may have been, because a lot of the Christian kind of a huge bulk. I know there were later reformations with the Protestants and things like this, but I think a lot of the major formative structures within Christianity had already occurred pre-Islam. So the Nicene Council, the See of Nicaea, and the institutionalization that takes place after that, they pretty much decide which Gospels are apocryphal and which are reliable, and there is some editing still that goes on along the way, but there were other people that did follow. So did people used to believe in the Gospel of Thomas, or the infancy Gospels of Thomas, or the Syrian? You have that in the Middle East there was some Gospels that some Christians followed that other Christians didn't. So who were the Christians that encountered the Prophet, and what Gospels did they follow? I don't know, but the Quran doesn't allude to it. It doesn't really address that at all. Right, so Jawad Butt. I'm Jawad Butt. Hiya Jawad, you're doing it. One, your name already reads Jawad Butt, but then you write, hi, I am Jawad Butt. Seriously, are you Jawad Butt? What is from the Netherlands? Alright, what is the connection between 786 and Bismillah? Much love. Well, much love right back at you. Right, so now the 786, I've answered that the Arabs of old, they had a system of counting. And so you still see it today. It's like Roman kind of numericals, the way an X represents 10 and a V represents 5. So like this, in Arabic, you had the letters of the alphabet laid out. So if you write them out as Abjad, Hawaz, Hutti, Kaliman, Sa'fas, Karishat, Takhad, Daddagh. boy, I memorized that so, it's been so many years I memorized that. But if you write them out in that order, right, what happens is, and then you digitize them, you place like 1 to 10, but once you reach 10, then you just go in tens. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, 30, 40, 60, all the way to 100, and then in hundreds. So 200, 300, and you do that till they run out. Now, that was their counting system. Now, if you get that, you can then use words and what are their numerical values. So people then, what they did is they broke down Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and added up to 786. It actually doesn't. It actually adds up to 787. It does, because they forgot that because you don't write the alif in Rahman, but you pronounce it, so it is there. But they didn't add that alif because it's not written, so they counted as 786. But there's actually an alif there, so it ought to be 787. Right, okay, so... Right, let's take some of these questions, people, that have been sent here as well. Somebody said, look, when standing at graves, Uthman radiallahu anh would weep until his beard was wet. Doesn't this signify that punishment in the afterlife is not merely a threat, but a reality? You see, I want to say something here. Look, everybody's relationship with God is different. Secondly, nobody can say whether your relationship with God is better or worse, as in right or wrong, compared to somebody else's. So some people may have a relationship with God based on a lot of fear, and it may be very right for them to do that. I'm not saying in any way. Thirdly, I want to say that just because somebody is crying, you don't need to associate tears with fear. I think that's a judgment you're making. Right. So, and lastly, we don't even know if that report is accurate, but let's just go with this report for now. You see, we all have a connection. I even feel, I'm sure atheists do have as well, although they'll deny it. But we have some connection with a being greater than us. Now, at times we must all get kind of very emotional. Now, including me. I'll be honest that there's times when when I'm on my own, obviously, there'll be sometimes where we'll all get kind of like, let's say, tearful, maybe, like I'm not saying you'll be crying, like bawling your head off, like like that, but you'll get tearful. And if I look back at the past at myself, there were times many years when I was a student, that even then I suppose I would get tearful over certain things, but maybe it was there were times when it would be more out of fear in the past. Like many Muslims, as you study, as you do things, it was a very kind of like a frightful, and you would have that, and I would be like that maybe 2 decades ago, a decade and a half ago, things like that. I would say that now, if you were to ask me, I would say there are still times that when I get into a certain state, that I will become at times like tearful over certain things. But it's not now, it's not now over fear. Like then, I would probably say it was. But now, with me, I'm just giving an introspectionist perspective here, like looking within. It's maybe more so over a kind of a mixture of things, I guess. Maybe an existential angst. Maybe a kind of a sense of an not being grateful, an ungratitude. that you realize that, you know, what you have, and these kind of things might make you tearful at times. They just, life itself can, you know, like pondering over it, just reflecting can have that effect on you. It doesn't have to be fear, I'm just saying. Just thinking about life can make one emotional and hence tearful, but it doesn't mean that it's always, it can be about fear, but it doesn't mean it has to be about fear, if that makes sense. Right, so Ibn Asim is in the house. Ahlan wa sahlan, ahlan wa sahlan. Right, so guys, I want to speak about something. I'm just going to bring this up. Un momento. Right, now, there is, those of you that have come across the cave, I want to share a few words about this. The cave is an initiative set up by some friends and students of mine. Now, amongst them, I mean, I don't know, those of you that have already seen it on social media, quite a few people involved in it. Amongst them, Abu Muawiyah, now, and others as well. And what they do is they hold, excuse me, they host certain events. I'm not sure how often they host them. I think it may be bi-weekly or sometimes maybe even once a month. I think I haven't actually been to the events yet, but some people think they're my events. I just get the credit for everything, honestly. But that said, okay, I'll come back to that. So these guys, young lads, who have I believe they have a very significant connection with God, with this deen, but they are very young in the age and of the age. These guys, there's many, a group of people involved. There's, what they do is they host nasheeds, some kind of, there's like musical kind of displays. There's some singing, there's some discussions, some talks, there's interaction with the crowd. That's what, basically it's a hub, a lively hub for young people to come to who want to relate to the deen. And they have some great people attending often that are very involved, like Khalid Siddiq, who is an artist himself. He sings. There's his brother Umar, who is a poet and is involved as well. They've got other people who come. Qasim Gray, who's involved. I think he's involved in some of the kind of singing as well, and other interaction part of it, and quite a few. But the main thing is there's a lot of, Mustafa Briggs is involved, who does some of the speeches there and things like this. Now, the main point is, what I'm trying to say is, a bunch of young guys, very enthusiasts, taken up the initiative to, hey, let's do something for young people who feel disengaged from the deen and they've got a place to come to. It's open to all. Men, women, girls, boys, they all go there. Now, they've had great turnouts. They've had a great success. I wish them all the luck. They definitely have my blessing. But the point is, what I'm trying to say is they've received some vicious hate. And I want to kind of speak about some of this. Right? They've been, people have been hating on this so bad that there's been so many tweets by people. And I've had some of these tweets and I saw them and I thought, I gotta read these out. As my Mufti Masala segment. Okay, so now, right, so there's one by, a girl called Source Algerian or anything. I don't know how she reads her name. But anyway, so there's a tweet by The Cave saying, jamming after the event with a live performance of Say MashaAllah by Khalid Siddiq, Muhammad Yahya, Qasim Gray. The beat was made on the spot by Kez. Kez is another very talented musician. Good times, #The Cave. Now, somebody said, weird flex, but okay. Alright, fine. Somebody wrote, I would rather go to a rave topless. I mean, alright. Can we come as well? Somebody wrote, what kind of a shambles is this? If I was there, honestly, I'm scrapping, man. Like, if I was there, I'd be fighting. Like, okay. So let me just translate that. Man, this isn't Islamic that you're singing nasheeds. If I was there, I would be fighting and abusing you. As it says we ought to do in Islam. Right, okay. Right, somebody says those defending the cave, cave movement. The cave movement, right, usually mention progression. Let's not progress all the way to Jahannam, please. That was a funny one. I love that one. Young men and women mix freely. No proper hijab either. No proper hijab. Sorry, I don't feel right. I should have. I gotta put something on my head to. Gotta cover my hair to read that. And everyone is encouraged to get to know each other and become a part of the community. How disgusting is that? You sickos. Like, you actually want to get to know people of the other gender. What's wrong with you? Isn't it enough that you know your sister and your mother? But people don't usually marry their sister and mother. You sicko. Right, so Sudaga Hussein says, gone are the days when our elders would lower their head in humility, mentioning the best of creation with tears flowing from their eyes. Allah save us from this fitna. Wow, very sentimental, you know, this one very senti. Sir Da'wah writes, and there's a picture, right, if I can zoom in, right, so this was the picture of the cave. There's, I don't know if you guys can see it there, but that's Qasim Gray kind of singing. He's got the microphone. And they've got an awesome, say, MashaAllah. I actually, you know, I'm not into nasheeds, but I gotta say it's an awesome track by Khalid Siddiq. Say, MashaAllah. This guy wrote, no difference between this and that balaclava in church drill SPAC nation cult. What the hell? Like, there's no difference between this and drill videos. So drill videos are those kind of gang affiliated videos made, usually put up on YouTube by young people that are usually kind of promoting knifing or gang crime, and it's that kind of I believe YouTube is trying to take them down as well now. So there's no difference between this and a balaclava drill video. Just because, in all honesty, I'm just going to be honest, just because Qasim and Mustafa or these other people are black, so if they are singing a nasheed, it's a drill video. And if it was a Pakistani, oh mashallah, it's a nasheed. So let's just say if Khalid Siddiq was a Pakistani, not a Jamaican, if he was singing, say mashallah with a Bud accent, say mashallah, say mashallah, say mashallah, and he put a topi on his head, this would now be mashallah, beautiful brother. You know, the beautiful brother has got a beautiful point, you know. But if he's black and he doesn't wear a hat, or if he's got a cap on and he says, say mashallah, it's a It's a gang affiliated drill video. Wallahi, can you believe the nonsense that these people are coming up with? Because the guy is black, it must be a gang related video. The guy's saying, say MashaAllah. You know, someone, like, you know, can you listen to what the guy's saying? He's saying, say MashaAllah. Oh, it must be like a balaclava wearing drill video. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Somebody wrote, Qadi'a wrote, sorry, are we in year 3 please? For mandems. For mandems. Don't you just love it when the religious all of a sudden go roadman on you, or road woman. Right, so, sorry, are we in year 3 please? For mandems to be cross-legged behind us. Could have gotten chairs at least with women behind and men at the front. So this is speaking about a point where they all kind of seated in the room, and they're trying to say there's men against the wall sitting at the back. So, oh my God, mandem who've got cross-legged, they've got their legs up. God forbid. They're sitting like, you know, they've got their knees up against the wall. Oh my God. The next inevitable step is obviously sexual abuse. That's just like, duh. I mean, what the hell is wrong with people? Like, seriously. Some bichara's probably just sitting by the wall, is probably tired, he's just reclining. Oh my God, he's got his knee up. Like, the next thing that follows is rape. That's just like, duh. Like, everybody knows that. Like, like, what the hell? It's like, talk about sexualizing everything yourself. And some people say, report this as spam. That's just a hater. You know, like a hater. Report this as spam. This is upsetting. Okay. The amount of madness these lot are spreading reminds me of a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, some of my ummah will follow the disbelievers inch by inch. Even if one of them crawled into a lizard hole, they would also follow. In brackets, I'm paraphrasing, by the way, he wrote. Well, and his name is Ghost. Well, Mr. Ghost, right? If you'd actually bothered to learn the hadith, you'd actually know what it actually said instead of paraphrasing it. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ in that hadith was speaking about those who institutionalized the religion. He wasn't even speaking about these things. But anyway, some guy wrote about Umi. Umi's got that kind of headgear on. And some guy wrote, thought this was some Sikh. Somebody wrote fake Islam, fake Islam. Anything else interesting? These were just some of the things. Some woman wrote, check this out. And I had to say this about Qasim Gray. They wrote, any guy that's light skinned is tapped. Period. What the? I honestly, wallahi, don't even understand that one. Any guy that's light skinned is tapped. Period. That was written by who goes by the name Witch Trilgoat. Is she just saying any light skinned black people are tapped? Is that what? Okay. No generalizations there. Well, people, this was to give you guys right, but anyway, somebody wrote, this is virtually imitating the kuffar by rapping and dancing in such a manner. Look, guys, I just want to say, relax yourselves. Relax yourselves. Because look, let's be honest. These people that attend these events, if they didn't attend these events, they weren't going to be coming to your cult masjid. That connection that ship has long sailed. So let them have a connection with some of these people. These people to you because they're singing. But wait a minute, when a nasheed sings, when there's a Pakistani guy singing, it's okay. When a black guy's singing, it's rapping, it's drill videos. And Pakistanis are doing it. When they're dancing at darbars, if you go to many of the darbars or you go to YouTube, just check darbars in Pakistan, there's guys dancing with the qawwali going on. These are just Sufis, these are just whirling dancing, people, or these are just, it's okay, they're just in their kind of mystic moment. But when it's a bunch of young people dancing, and if they happen to be black, then, oh my God, what's this trash, what's this? Guys, your problem is in there. It's not out there. These people are not the problem. These people are providing a free event for young people to at least have some connection with the deen. Now, I understand you might disagree with certain things. Fine. Disagree with it. And this, oh my God, why haven't they got barriers? Men and women, they need barriers. The Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, placed no barrier in his masjid. Whenever the Prophet spoke to people, you think the Prophet never used to speak to people in his time when you think he wouldn't give them advice? Whenever he spoke to people, there was never a barrier between men and women. They just hurdled together. And one might say that, generally people would hurdle at the front and they would, or however they would do it, but there was no set structure. There was no, you think the Prophet could, do you think that you're so intelligent that the Prophet couldn't foresee this and you could? But people are corrupt today. They will, the people are corrupt today. Back then they were corrupt. What, back then, what? Men and women, what? What, they never used to have sex? Like what? Like what was it that we do today that they never used to do back then? I'm sorry, you can obviously see all this, that you're more concerned about the religion than the Prophet himself. The Prophet said, we will pray. He never even set a barrier for prayer. For generally meeting in the masjid, he never set a barrier. He couldn't envisage it. Do you know what Imam Malik said to somebody that made a suggestion about something the Prophet hadn't done? He said, you are telling me that you know more about goodness than the Prophet of God himself. So, stay in your lane, people. Just kind of take a moment and understand what's going on. You're chasing people away from a connection with God. Now, I understand you can disagree with it all you like. You don't have to agree with the way people are doing things. But, just hating. People were calling this the Mut'a cave. But, look, in all honesty, let's just be honest. Look, the women that are going there, they're very respectable women. There's somebody's daughters, somebody's sisters, somebody's wives. I'm not one person's wife. But these are dignified people. For you to be calling this Mut'a cave, that these women going there are just having random sex with random people. Like, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Is this what Islam teaches you? To kind of like, just because, a woman sits next, so on a bus is what? Just an orgy? Is that what's going on in a bus? Like anywhere where there's mixed. So in Mecca today, in the Kaaba today, there are no barriers. Men and women are mixed. There isn't no women this way, men this way. They all do tawaf. What's going on in Mecca then? Is that like, would you say that just because they're standing next to somebody, that's, oh my God, this must be mut'a going on? So have some dignity, have some respect. And this is why, I want to say something. This is why, people, this is why you guys, people that are doing this are living miserable lives. Because, you see, it begins in there. The hatred, the venom. You poison yourself. And then you suffer. These people carry on. They're having an awesome time. So yeah, so I just wanted to share some of that. I did see it and I couldn't really... I mean, I thought, you know what, that is a must. I have to speak on that. Guys, I think we've really spent enough time today, right? I think I've got to leave you guys to it, inshallah, till next week. Do any questions, any issues, reach out to me, inshallah. It's Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. Snapchat is Malm 2014. The rest are just all Mufti Abu Layth. I am on Twitter, but I don't use it, man. Too many. You know what it is? I use it now and then, but there's just, it takes up all your time with all the haters. You know, people, the trolls just sit there. They're like, and there's too many awesome things to be doing. So, guys, take very good care of yourselves. Remember, look, people, immerse yourselves in love, learning, and laughter. That's what I would say. You know, if you can do that, you will have, inshallah, spent an amazing lifetime on this dunya. Much love, people, inshallah. Till next week, over and out. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.